alerts are sent locally via a 10-year-old radio protocol that satellite radio stations use to populate song names and details on dashboard entertainment screens. It didn't take long before someone figured out how to manipulate this protocol. The researchers' experiment was performed with a very limited scope so as not to interfere with other vehicles on nearby roads, and not all of the project was quite so hair-raising or serious. For their first attempt in injecting rogue messages into consumer GPS gadgets, the two Italian researchers popped up innocuous notifications such as "bullfights ahead." Since roadside GPS alerts are not encrypted, anyone with the right equipment and knowledge of the signal used by the dashboard gadget could do this. The reverse is also true. Someone could block an emergency message in what is known as a denial-of-service attack. Thus, anyone with a low-powered radio transmitter who knows the frequency used by a GPS unit can broadcast information, true or false, to passing travelers. While such ad hoc broadcasting is illegal in the United States, this is not the case in other countries. Newer GPS gadgets use satellite-based alerts, which are much harder to spoof, although they also use unencrypted satellite signals. But older GPS units still relying on FM signals remain vulnerable to such an attack. Given that today we have a tendency to abdicate our common sense and simply trust these tiny wafers of silicon, if this book accomplishes only one goal, I hope it is that you will become much more skeptical about all the gee-whiz gadgets coming our way. 1. Not only can people send false information to our gadgets, they can also obtain personal data from us without our knowledge. The iPhone, for example, does not use GPS for its location services. Apple decided that tracing a phone's Wi-Fi internet connection to a physical location holds significant promise over GPS. Microsoft and Google have their own Wi-Fi location services. However, Wi-Fi is not necessarily superior to GPS for geolocation. It's just more convenient. In 2008, a team of researchers in Zurich, Switzerland, found ways in which the Apple Wi-Fi location network could be compromised. The iPad, iPhone, and iPod Touch gadgets query the nearest wireless access points, say an internet cafe, a business, or local residence, and transmit that information to a database where it is correlated with a physical address, longitude and latitude. The Swiss researchers, however, fed this service incorrect information, telling the Apple service that the iPhone was in New York City when it was still in Zurich. But what if this vulnerability could be used with a more ominous intent? 2 years earlier, security researcher Terry Stenvold published similar findings in 2600, a popular and well-known hacker magazine. Stenvold found that he could steal someone else's hardware specifications, for example, the unique ID of a mobile phone or the unique hardware ID of a laptop, then upload that information to a location service and have the service tell him that person's current location. Here, technology could be used surreptitiously to track, for example, an ex-girlfriend's current location. Already, third parties can capture our location information and store it for an indefinite period. Have we considered the long-term consequences of this? How might a random trip to a seedy part of town look 10 years later? What if it wasn't random? With enough data, what hidden patterns of obsessive behavior might emerge? Or what if we could spoof our current location to make it appear that we are always at work when we are really not? Should we trust such location data? If this book accomplishes a second goal, I hope it will be to create an awareness of the various ways common gadgets can leak personal information. 2. When Gadgets Betray Us, if you haven't already guessed, is a book about breaking things and not necessarily putting them back together. It is about hardware hacking, a relatively new area of research and concern. how our car...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.